One of the most common things I see with students, honestly, is not always a lack of technical skill, but it's that doubt. It's that feeling that they're not sure if what they're doing is worth it or if what they're doing is heading even in the right direction. And I was kind of inspired to kind of even just make this video this week on this topic because I had the privilege of meeting with one of my regular students, Michelle, who is, very talented. And it had been a little while since we kind of caught up and we talked. And it's always fun in these scenarios because, they get to front load me with a lot of the work that they've been kind of grinding out in the break or our off time, and you kind of get to catch up, of course. And, I'm floored. I'm technically floored with the skills, that she had in this case, the rendering skills, the painting skills, the drawing, all of the core kind of pillars of art itself had improved, since our previous talk. She has been putting in the time, but she, of course, came to me like many students do, and was just confused on am I doing the right thing? Am I wasting a lot of time? I keep going back to lessons and tutorials, and she admitted, I love just being a student of art. That aspect of our craft never goes away, right? There was always something to improve. But yes, I absolutely agreed. It's very easy to kind of put yourself in this creative loop where instead of almost doing the thing, right, we're in an endless kind of cycle of prepping for the thing, right? And that thing can be different for any of us, no matter what kind of creative we are. Maybe we're doing a portfolio prep project. So instead of actually just doing the project, we just coming up with endless sets of excuses and things to plan. I gotta plan the project, or before I start the project, I have to learn this and this, right? And we constantly just kind of drag it out, and we're avoiding doing the thing. So it's always a combination. If we look at historically successful artists, it's always those artists that are extremely persistent and those that are almost equally, if not more, passionate about the craft, about the skill, about just loving creating and putting their thoughts into some kind of tangible form, right? It's always passion and persistence. And of course, to kind of cut to the chase here, I told Michelle, look, your art is stunning. Just be a go-getter, right? Have that mindset, that personal kind of creative growth mindset. You can do it, and you don't need any reason to stop or to put that off any longer. And of course, we went over several examples of these creators that I thought she was equally as good at in terms of technical skill, and showed how much money, that they were making, or how successful they are just kind of doing their thing, right? Doing their craft and making something, with it. But I was she also just loves, she loves doing pet work. She loves doing some portrait or some figurative stuff. There's a lot of facets to her as a creator. And so I was telling her, you can do all these things. And if we find, these little ways that you can market it, you can make these things. You can make one image that you genuinely like, right? Being truly passionate about it. And you can find all these little things to do it. So of course, over the call, we made her a 3-month plan of what exactly she's going to do, the scope of the project, how big it is, and then what she's going to do, actionable steps. She was, of course, really enthusiastic about that because you don't have to wait. And that's what I'm going to talk about primarily throughout the rest of this video, is being a creator, not letting our lack of talent get in the way of our ambitions. Or maybe it's just the lack of confidence, kind of covering that up for it. I know I certainly experience a lot of that as well. But I was telling Michelle, you are ready, you want to create, you don't know what to do with yourself on the day-to-day with your art, start just doing your thing. Build up your brand, build up your assets, and start just being and living that creative lifestyle that you want to. It's not going to be, insanely fruitful at first, but, you can work to there. Anybody can work to there. I see it way too often. So, of course, what I'm kind of working on here in the background of this video are just some sketches. These are things I'm kind of insanely insecure about, and I'm just having fun. I was having fun drawing these. Monday night, the hangout, you guys can stop by. The links are in the Discord below. And I just kind of doodle and chill before bed, in doing these. And this is just an example of me following up in my previous video where I am admitting that I don't sketch enough, and I don't sketch enough for fun. And I want to break that bad habit and turn that into a good one. And so this is just me just drawing some things I'm really uncomfortable drawing. Like robots, bots, hard surface things. I know it. I can do the fundamentals, but I'm just really insecure about it, and I know I could be a lot better if I just do this a little more. And so that's what I'm going to be chipping away at here in the background. But my first kind of major little point that I do want to get across here today is that there is a difference between talent and ambition, and that there is a set of misconceptions, I think, out there. I've lived one my whole life. My mother is the exact opposite. She's like, oh, I could never draw. I'm not artistic. I'm not creative. Or like I would, when I wanted to take music lessons as a kid, she's like, you don't know music. You can't do that. You just color. It's like, but it's a skill. You can train it up. And I try to explain this to her throughout many parts of my life. She still never gets it. But again, she's got a set of disempowering beliefs, and I could never change that unless she wants to change that, unless she were to try. It'd make a heck of a series if I could train my mother, at 70 how to draw. But she just believes that she can't, and that I can because I was born with the ability to, in a way. She knows I've worked hard toward it, but she still thinks it was kind of in me all along, that I could just almost do it way better than most people, even though that's not the case at all. Right? We've always had that kid in class that was like a cut above the rest, that could just draw better, that could color better, and I was never that person. Right? I've got videos where I show my report cards from art class. I was always a B student. I couldn't get higher than a B in art class. Couldn't color better. But, talent versus ambition. It's not innate or it's fixed, right? And I still think at the end of the day, there's no substitute for hard work. And that, of course, that it is not just talent alone that determines any measure of success in this field. And that was a big topic, that I was going over with Michelle, and that it's a little bit of persistence and determination with a tiny bit of focus goes a long way. She left the meeting, of course, with a lot more confidence and a lot more certainty of what she could do to fill her time proactively, as a creator. And the other thing, of course, to note with this too is that there is no universal standard, when it comes to skill or ambition. It's extremely diverse and subjective. And part of the problem is this is, like my mother, some view talent as a barrier of entry. I think even Michelle was thinking of this as like a barrier entry. She has to keep getting better and better and better just to start to doing the thing. This is the thing a lot of us feel. And you don't have to be like that, right? Like we can all start somewhere. It's just kind of knowing it's going to be rough at first. There's going to be some things to iron out, right? The first attempts at anything aren't ever going to be really good, but we have to just keep trying. And of course, with a little bit of objective thought toward that, like, of course, you can improve incrementally right over time. Art is a long game. And the other thing, number two that I wanted to talk about ambition today, of course, is the power of it, the benefits of it, and of course, how we can utilize that as creators. So in essence, ambition serves as the catalyst, right? That creative drive that absolutely pushes us forward to achieve everything we possibly need to. This is an ever-evolving world, this creative world of art, and we need the power of ambition to empower us, right? To push us beyond our comfort zones, to pursue our ambitious goals, and to ultimately realize our full creative potential. So like personally, when I worked in my family's cold, dark factories, it really pushed me to work hard. I just felt that ambition, that creative drive so hard. I was surrounded by soot. Everything was dark and steely and very metal. It was filthy. Very physical labor intensive. That job left me very little opportunity to think, critically and act creatively in any sense of the word. So it was just kind of like bottle up all day. When I did my 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift, I'd kind of just store it, think about it, have that time to reflect in the 35-minute car ride on the way home, which was great because I got to decompress, process my thoughts. I'd get home, 4 p.m.-ish, and then I could just let it all out. And I did that for 2 to 3 hours every single day for 2 to 3 years. On the way home, I'd be able to set and then plan out how I'd pursue my goals, and I'm doing that again right now, like what we're doing here today. I'm gonna draw every week, even if it doesn't amount to anything. I at least want to just get drawing. Back then, when I was a student, it'd be like, okay, I'm gonna do 3 watercolors a week. I'm gonna do a couple, anatomy sketches. It was just more like the standard kind of fundamental practices back then. But the power of ambition, really is about building resilience, right? Learning from our failures. And a huge part of this, of course, is just setting realistic goals. Like, I'm not going to set a goal to fill a sketchbook every week or to do 5 finished drawings every week. Maybe that is somewhat realistic, but I want to set things that are manageable, things that I know I can pretty much achieve with a little bit of compromise. And on the other side of this, a huge part about keeping my ambition high is having some sort of stress management system, right? Because when you get stressed out, when I get stressed out, ambition no dives. So you got to, manage that stress. I'm pretty good at it most days of the week. Of course, I do slip this week. One way I do this, of course, is physical exercise. I go to the gym, I work out 5 days a week, and I do cardio 3 days a week. And I'm always out working in my yard. That is a huge thing for me. Without doing any of that, I would be a wad of stress. But there's other examples of creatives out there doing exactly this, right? They're expanding their creative horizons, they're constantly experimenting, and they're hugely successful in their own ways, right? Like Pete Moore-Barker, a huge kind of independent entrepreneur kind of artist, right, with his Angelarium. They got Darren Bartley, who's on his massive Fight Punch project, which is constantly just growing and expanding in its scope. And someone talented like Gavin Manners, right? He's a concept guy, and he's just building his own mechs. He's 3D printing them. He's painting them. He's not just drawing. He's drawing all the time, but he's doing something with it, right? I love these kinds of creators out there. With ambition, you can achieve anything. And so for my point number 3 today, this is something we all know of, overcoming self-doubt. And this is something we all are plagued with, right? Self-doubt and fear of inadequacy constantly plague us. Admit, I was up last night way later than I wanted because I couldn't think. My mind wouldn't stop. And it was like that part of my mind, oh God, I swear to God, it just wouldn't shut up. It was the doubtful side. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You got to think of this. Like, I couldn't get my mind to shut up and go to sleep. And in reality, as soon as I was able to win that battle, which I did win eventually, I was like, and I told myself, dude, things are gonna be okay. You're doing fine. You're doing everything great. You've got the week, the month stacked with things you're doing. You're giving it every effort you need to. Just steer, trust the process and stay on track. I had to reassure myself of this so I could go to bed last night, so I could get up and make these videos. But again, it happens. And no matter how much success or how big of a client I've ever had, it never goes away. And it's always there. And I think that's what really kind of separates a lot of the people that end up doing kind of creative work in a more long-term way. It's like they kind of understand that this is a relationship thing with those thoughts, and it's all about management. It's all about managing those thoughts, right? Because what happens with the lack of self-confidence, you're gonna lose motivation, you're gonna burn it really fast, and of course that's gonna stifle your creativity, right? And that's what was happening to me earlier this week. It's all very, very bad things. And then of course, imposter syndrome knocks on the door, slides right in a very unwanted way. Hey, you can't do this. You're not up to the quality standards, right? That literally just shows up, that voice in your head. And that, of course, that always comes from comparison, right? That negative way, because we'll talk about that later in the video. There's positive ways to compare yourself, but just looking at really successful people And it's something I do a lot. And sometimes it's like, well, you should be doing that more. Why can't you do this? Right? And that leads to the imposter syndrome, which ultimately is crippling enough for us mentally to avoid any kind of challenge. Well, I told that part of my voice in my head literally this morning to F off. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And whether it works or not, I mean, I don't care. I'm going to just do it, and I'm going to enjoy doing it. Right? Just putting that voice in its place. But yeah, overcoming self-doubt. It's a huge part that can absolutely impede our ambitions, for sure. Give us reasons to not do something. And another part of this equation too with overcoming self-doubt is the perfectionist, right? Absolutely got to shut that side of ourselves off as well, because perfectionism, right, that's going to lead to this excess of very high standards, and that's going to lead us to thinking of constant dissatisfactions of our ideas, and displeased with ourselves, which is the opposite of getting those dopamine hits. It's going to put you in the slumps. The slumps, the negative town, and we don't want to be there. So again, personally, to cultivate resilience against self-doubt, I try to prioritize positive creative habits. One way of doing this, of course, is to celebrate progress rather than fixing on specific results. That is easy to do when it comes to perfectionism anyway, right? Finished, not perfect. And I do have to constantly recognize with myself that perfectionism, it's just an ideal. It's impossible to measure anything by it because it's immeasurable. And that's another big problem that is easy to look at like that, but it still gets in our way. So again, I'm trying to focus more on the process, right? Doubts will come arise, and they do make me question these directions. They were making my student Michelle question all of her choices. I just reflect regularly on my intentions. I'm using Notion more. That was another goal I set up this spring, that I want to get in, organize my projects, track more things, because what's measured is improved. I talk about that a lot. But I reflect on those attention, and I remind myself of the underlying reasons of why I'm diving into a project or a particular aspect of my work. And the last thing I often try to do is to normalize my mistakes, right? Just like with these robots now, they're kind of very first pass. They start off super derpy. They might not be the most glamorous thing, but you know what? There's going to be growth in there, and these don't have to be perfect, of course, right? So no clean lines. I'm not even really suggesting perspective, and I'm just letting some of these ideas be bad. I'm okay with finishing these, even though I know there's others that are better. Even though I know there's other better ideas for these on the internet. That's part of it. But you know, I'm enjoying drawing these little rover guys, which are utility-based little drones, you know, with some treads. A kind of really simple idea. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, but I'm just enjoying kind of sketching these guys out. So, right, cultivating self-awareness, right, developing that resilience, and of course, like what Michelle did, seeking support from a community or a mentor is a great way to bypass a lot of this if you need it as well. And of course, I do have links below. I'm expanding the services. I'm revamping the website. That'll all be up, you know, in the coming weeks. But you can always drop in for peer support on a Discord. But practice self-compassion and focus, of course, on incremental progress that can help you navigate that self-doubt and that fear of inadequacy. All right? All right, so for number 4 on this, and that's, of course, I do have to just mention developing skills through practice. Even though, you know, I'm just drawing these little bots for fun, and I'm not putting a lot of pressure, you know, on my shoulder for doing these. Sometimes you need that, right? To balance everything out, you need like your free sketches. Whether you're going to get a sketchbook, go down to Starbucks, just draw whatever you want. There doesn't have to be measured sort of exercises in that. Sometimes you just got to draw for the sake of drawing. I'm 100% for that. But I do feel, you know, once you want to get more serious about it, make sure you're doing the other side, you know, of the equation, where you're having bouts or spurts of very deliberate practice, things that you can more tangibly measure, you know, like, oh, I'm working out a design for this, or I'm going to do a color study of this to improve my color, I'm going to grind out perspective cubes to learn how things are structurally built, right? That stuff, of course, is all the other side of it. They're essential to help us grow. Um, and what I'm doing, today, and what I'm talking about with Michelle is you've put in the time, right? You've grinded up your skill. You got technically proficient. Now now take your craft and do it, at least in the near future. Now switch gears and do it for self fulfillment, right? Do it for you and enjoy doing it for you. That is essential to being any kind of creator long term, right? It's great if you can start with your creative pursuits, and if that leads to career opportunities, that's great. If that leads to something you can monetize, that's great. But just, of course, enjoy it, and make something that you genuinely enjoy, and you do it for you. The best part about deliberate practice, or just kind of creating for personal fulfillment, is that it can generate and foster a lot of creativity. I know I always feel that. Like sometimes, like I'm staring at the blank page. It can be a lot. It can be unmotivating. But, once I start moving, I get a little more confident with that. And as I get more confident, that ideas start coming. By the time I'm done a page, I've already got 10 more ideas that I didn't have when I started. But right, I just have to kind of start that. And the same is happening when I'm practicing or doing anything like that. I'll look, at a blank page like anybody, and I feel so much self-doubt, like, what am I doing? This page is gonna conquer me. These are thoughts I battle every painting, like, how am I gonna pull this off? And it's like a slow burn of doubt, right, that's going through me. And it's until, even if I kind of sketch out, like when I'm doing these robots at a very rough level, maybe like once I get some of these bigger pieces in, some of that starts to peel away. But all in all, like, that doubt is going to be all the way till I stick the landing, until, I've got it completed, I've got it colored, or I've I'm going to call it finished, at the end of the hour or so. Then I'll call it done, and I'll feel like, okay, I did it. But even then, right, there's always the possibility, and this has happened to me both ways, where I finish something and I've hated it. And then I looked at it the night, the next day, and I said, you know what, that's not so bad. You were super hard on yourself, right? How many of you out there are hard on yourselves when it comes to that? And then the opposite, where I finished it, loved it. This happens a lot. I looked at it the next day and be like, scratch your head, like, what am I thinking? Right, but it's just the act of just doing that and getting used to being okay with it not always working out or not always going to plan, that you're gonna, boost your creativity and your productivity. Just being okay with not everything always being amazing. And of course, like, as you do this just more, you can do higher quality work, which will ultimately lead you to probably having a bigger artistic network, which can, enhance and reinforce your marketability. So there's still like a lot of little benefits of just kind of creating and putting your work out there. And again, this is for those students out there that are like Michelle, that was just super hesitant about putting her work out there. It's like, your work is beautiful, you're talented. Just start putting it out there. Yeah, there is always going to be better people. There's also going to be worse people, right? That's just how it works. So go for it. Put it out there, and don't wait any longer. There's just no sense in waiting. The world needs your beautiful art. It really does. And that's what I'm saying here, is to not let any kind of self-doubt or lack of skill that you think you might have or not have get in that way. And just as a brief practical tip on this note, if you want to go through and grind out some art in a proactive way, the things that I do is I make routines, right? I'm using Notion to do that more. Non-sponsored. It's not sponsored, but by Notion, but I've been using it more and I'm liking it. I block my time out and I outline my goals. And then if for specific things, I need to develop a specific exercise for that goal. So for me, it's just to like get in the habit of drawing. I'm just doing a simple drawing, right? This is my exercise to-do list that I'm personally doing this week. It doesn't have to be pretty. I might not even put these online anywhere. I'm doing them for me. Point number 5, I think, I'm not even sure at this point, but just embracing the growth mindset. This is just realizing that anything good and anything worthwhile takes time, and there's not some kind of quick, easy answer for this on a personal long-term growth. Like, look, if you just want to make a pretty picture and then not enjoy the process or the culture and any aspect of it, be my guest. Use AI. But it's like, if you're just doing it, like, sure, I don't care. I'm not going to judge you hard. But do your thing. I'm going to do my thing. I like the process I like creating. I love connecting with other creative individuals. So that's why I don't use that. Even though I know there's people out there, like on ArtStation, selling AI art, making a killing. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it because I love it, and I love the culture with it. And I love the connections I can make with my craft. That's the best part about this YouTube channel. I get to talk with beautiful people like you guys. So again, back to my point. Again, I got derailed a lot in this episode. But artistic skills, right, need to be developed and improved over time, and it does take time, right, through dedication, effort, and learning. And this mindset, of course, contrasts the one I mentioned at the beginning as that fixed mindset, which assumes that, our art talents are innate and they're, unchangeable, that we're destined to do one thing or another, right? So a couple ways I get through this and embrace my own growth mindsets is learning from criticisms. You can let me know down below if you think these bots are terrible or not. I'll try not to take it personally, right? But learning from criticism, posting online and various places, or taking a class, getting feedback from a teacher or mentor, that's all great. Great ways to do it, but not seeing it as a personal attack, right? That is the key. And of course, this is the other thing I mentioned earlier on is, proactive comparison. And by this, I mean getting inspiration from each other. Getting inspiration from others. I do that all the time. I look at what I consider to be the top successful people in all kinds of fields of creativity, whether they're visual development artists, whether they're independent artists, whether they're illustrators or concept artists. I'm looking at everybody. And I want to see who's doing what's working, why it's working. You deconstruct it and like, okay, like what could I do like 10% better in my own work that, person A is doing, right? It's really great to kind of see that and not like, oh, I don't have this or I'm not as good as that yet, right? Not looking at it like that, but the other side of the coin where it's like, what can I learn, from this? That's all part of, the embracing the growth mindset. And the last thing, again, something that I'm kind of doing today is just stepping outside your comfort zone. There's been a bazillion videos on this channel where I paint like a pretty little landscape and it's all colorful and fun. I love that. I'll do that for the rest of my life. But in the spirit of this video, again, I'm stepping a little outside my comfort zone for myself, and I'm doing it as an example for you guys. I've designed sci-fi cars and cityscape. I've done all that, but it doesn't mean I'm comfortable with it or that it's my favorite go-to thing to draw as a means of comfort. No, but I'm just doing it, and I'm trying to be a little more proactive, right? So for once, I'm trying to lead by example here, guys. So, yeah, embracing the growth mindset is the last thing to help you work through the lack of motivation or that feeling of self-doubt, right? So, guys, for those that are still here, I have to just let you know, like, you are not alone if you're feeling that you have a lack of talent or that if you feel that you're not good enough and that self-doubt and imposter syndrome is constantly plaguing you. It's constantly knocking you in. Heck, if you're like me, keeping you up late at night this week, it's just, we can't pick it, right? I wouldn't choose to ever have those feelings, but because we're human, they dwell on us. And I just try to think of like what I can do with those feelings. What can I do tomorrow that's going to do the complete opposite that my mind wants to kind of shut down, curl up, and cry. Sometimes my mind wants to almost do that because it's easier. It's easier to start over. It's easier to do something else. No, I'm gonna work through rebuilding my website. I'm gonna work through redrawing all these robots. I'm gonna start my other little side projects that I got going on. I'm gonna until I can't create anymore because I have like a heart attack or a stroke, which would be terrible, but I mean, at this point, that is going to be the only thing that stops me. So let me know down below, of course, in the comments, if you guys are troubled by any of these things, and if there's something you could do that I mentioned in the video that you could implement a little bit better, because I'd love to hear from you guys. I'll catch you next time. I do have links below for everything. The courses, the mentorship availabilities, it's all down there. I'll catch you guys next time.